Tonight, now the administration will get to tell its side of the story for the very first time tomorrow. Attorney General Jeff Sessions will do just that in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. There was some doubt as to whether this was going to be behind closed doors. We now can report tonight that it will definitely be open testimony, and we will, of course, carry it live here. Good evening, everybody. I'm Martha MacCallum, and this is the story. So also tonight, senators are calling for an investigation into Loretta Lynch after James Comey revealed that she had influenced him to soften the language surrounding the whole Clinton email matter. Plus more questions about when the former FBI director began leaking his side of the story to the New York Times. Does it actually go back a lot further than he has so far admitted? Lots to cover tonight, but let's dig in with a preview of how the administration intends to handle this whole thing tomorrow. I'm joined by Fox News senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Judge, good to see you tonight. Top of the show, big story tomorrow, and a lot of preparation to get ready for what we're going to see here. First of all, what do you expect, and do you think it's wise for Jeff Sessions to be doing this in open testimony?
I do not. As much as I want to hear him, and as much as I know the public wants to hear him, if he had asked my advice, I would say it is not wise for you to do this.
Why?
You are going to be attacked personally, and you're going to have to defend yourself. You are the head of the Justice Department, and you're going to have to defend it. That includes Bob Mueller. You are close to the president, and the president expects you to give his version of events which contradict Jim Comey's version. What do you do when those three constituencies, you yourself, the Justice Department, and President Trump, have conflicting interests? Which side do you take? What answer do you give? The Democrats are going to start right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
You committed perjury. You lied to the Judiciary Committee. And then when you corrected that statement, you committed perjury again. I'm mouthing what I expect them to say, so I don't believe this myself.
Clearly, one of the first questions is going to be, why did you not report that you had met with Kislyak 3 times?
Correct. The meetings with Kislyak.
But what if his answer is good? What if his answer is, look, here's the content of our meeting. I'll tell you exactly what was said. This third meeting, his people are now saying that, they were on a line, a receiving line, and that it was not a meeting at all.
The meetings with Kislyak, in my view, are either standard operating procedure or utterly harmless.
But why leave it off then? Why didn't he report it?
Correct. And that's the problem. The problem is lying to Congress, or, this is the more difficult one, misleading Congress. One can be technically truthful and therefore not be charged with perjury, but misleading and therefore charged with misleading. Now, he's a lawyer. He's a smart lawyer. He's the chief prosecutor of the land. He knows this, but he's got to be mindful of it.
All right. So why now? I mean, do you believe that he was going to have to testify at some point so that he wants to just get it over with? Because this clearly makes a whole other day of Russian news that the Trump administration says they don't want.
Correct. I am sure someone will ask him why now, and my guess is the White House wants him to do this. The president gave his version in his inimitable style. I don't think that, most respectably, effectively dulled or neutralized what Jim Comey said. Whatever you think of Jim Comey, and there are cracks in his armor, in my view, he was credible and compelling. I think the White House believes that Attorney General Sessions will be credible and compelling when he gives his version. But there are a lot of problems here. He's not going to be speaking as the chief law enforcement officer of the land. He's going to be speaking as a witness in criminal investigations and FBI counterintelligence. So he's limited in what he can say.
All right, so, what if the White House is saying that there's nothing there? So go ahead. Go tell your story.
That's probably the best argument that they can make.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that Jeff Sessions is the person to do that because of these conflicts I spoke about, but that's probably...
And it will
MacCallum, you'd be brilliant down there. That's the best argument they can make.
It will become all about why didn't you disclose this meeting, right?
Yes.
It's not going to be about the content of the meeting. They're going to try to keep driving it off the content of the meeting and to the issue of misleading.
From the emails we're getting tonight, the Democrats on that committee, and some very smart ones, are salivating to go after their former colleague. He should not expect softball because he's a former member of the Senate, and I think he knows that.
All right. Judge, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
More to get to with you tomorrow night on this. So as Attorney General Jeff Sessions preps for this testimony tomorrow, Special Counsel Robert Mueller is putting together his investigative team for the probe into Russia's 2016 interference, as it has been called, including these two gentlemen, Michael Dreeben and Andrew Weissman, who you see here. Prominent legal voices are blasting these two additions to the Mueller team. Constitutional scholar Jonathan Turley warning that one Mueller lieutenant has pushed before and been struck down for obstruction charges. Newt Gingrich also raising the alarm on this, calling this investigation in his mind a big witch hunt and a setup. Watch him.
Comey said, I deliberately leaked through an intermediary to create this counsel, who happens to be one of his closest friends. Then look at who Mueller's starting to hire. I mean, these are people that, frankly, look to me like they're setting up to go after Trump, including people, by the way, who have been reprimanded for hiding from the defense information in two major cases. I think this is going to be a witch hunt.
So joining me now, Republican Congressman Sean Duffy and former chief economist to President Obama, Professor Austin Goolsbee. Good to have both of you with us tonight. You know, Newt Gingrich, prior to this, said some very positive things, actually, about the selection of Robert Mueller. But now he has changed his mind. Why, Sean Duffy?
Well, I think there's reason for concern. Number one, you have a relationship between Mueller and Comey. They're best friends, and Comey might be a star witness, number one. But you're hiring a litigation team, a bunch of prosecutors who have given thousands of dollars to Democrat candidates. If you're going to do an investigation, let's hire investigators to see what impact Russia had on the last election. This seems more like an effort to prosecute Donald Trump than it is to investigate. And my concern, Martha, is what the hell are we investigating? You've had Comey and other Director Clapper, both with knowledge, come out and say there's no evidence of collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians. Why are we going through an investigation? Why are we going through this charade of an investigation when there's no evidence that Donald Trump had anything to do with the Russians? This is the Democrats' effort to undermine the election results of last November 8th and get their net end result, which is Donald Trump out of the White House.
All right. I want to put up a quote from Jonathan Turley's piece and get your thoughts on this, Austin. He's talking about Michael Dreeben. He says he argued in an unsuccessful appeal a sweeping interpretation of obstruction of justice, an interpretation that I criticized, says Turley, as wildly overbroad. The interpretation resulted in a unanimous rejection of the Supreme Court. Dreeben's addition should be a big concern. No, he didn't say big. Should be a concern to the Trump defense team. What do you think, Austin?
Look, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to have to take his word for it. I know Mr. Turley was a very outspoken advocate for the impeachment of President Clinton and has been a defender of President Trump. What I don't understand about this, and Martha, you and I talked about this in transition. Donald Trump had won, and the first inklings about the Russia stuff had come up, and the Trump administration's approach was, well, I understand where it came from. It's absolutely a business approach as opposed to a Washington approach, and that was shut it down, deny everything, turn over no documents. And if you remember, I said back then, the problem with that is that it runs the risk that the whole story and the whole investigation morphs into, instead of a nothing burger that there wasn't anything to it, it becomes all about, well, why did you cover it up? Why did you not admit this meeting? And that will suck his policy agenda down the toilet. He will not be able to do anything, just as Bill Clinton was not able to do his policy after the Lewinsky.
That the judge and I were just talking about. I mean, you have a special prosecutor, a special counsel rather, who's involved in this now. The more sort of fuel, the more you fuel this fire, you know, Jeff Sessions is going to go out there tomorrow. That's going to be a whole other day of Russia, 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 Sean Duffy. So is the White House making a mistake in not sort of saying, look, this is contained. We are not going to discuss this anymore, and trying to sort of move on to get more focused on their agenda as they say they really want to do?
I think it's wishful thinking, because the Democrats in the House and the Senate and the left-wing media is going to continue the drumbeat of Russia, Russia, Russia. But to your point, I think the White House would be served well if they focus on the agenda that got them elected. I mean, we have to start talking about the economy and jobs and tax reform and health care and security and the southern border. Those are the issues that my constituents care about. They don't care about Russia. And that's what I think Donald Trump has to do. Put away the Twitter with regard to Russia and focus on the agenda and stay silent.
Yeah.
But I think the appearances matter, though, Martha. You have the appearances of Mueller and this prosecutorial team that don't look good, like they're going to be fair and impartial.
Are Democrats, Austin, concerned with the bottom line issue here, whether or not there was intent on the part of anybody who's related, a satellite, as he called it, to the Trump campaign, because they've said there's no investigation into the president? Are Democrats concerned with that issue, and are they truly concerned with figuring out the hacking and, you know, preventing future elections from being subjected to this, or is it about bringing down this president?
Well, for sure they're concerned about the issue of Russia. And I would be a little, it's not exactly true to say that Clapper said there is no evidence of collusion. What Clapper said was it was not his decision, and that there was enough evidence that he thought there should be an investigation by the FBI of whether there was collusion. That's not.
I mean, you have Democrats and Republicans, who've all said that there is no evidence of that yet. But as we all well know, the investigation is continuing. So who knows?
They said there should be an investigation. I think some of the Democrats, for sure.
But I was asking you if it's all politics where the Democrats are concerned, and is it all about bringing the president down?
I think they're critical of the president, and if there is evidence of obstruction of justice, they would like the investigator to go
That's
after
what it's
that
all about
too.
now. Austin, thank you very much. Sean Duffy, thank you. Good to see you both.
Great to see you again.
So coming up next, politicians on both sides of the aisle demanding answers tonight after President Obama's Attorney General Loretta Lynch apparently told the FBI Director James Comey, "Can you go easy on your language when you talk about the Clinton email investigation, please?" That bombshell report is straight ahead. And then Ivanka Trump saying that she is shocked by the viciousness in Washington, D.C. The left has quickly pounced on this. Highlights from her comments this morning here on Fox News and some of the reaction to it straight ahead. Plus, this story is getting crazier by the minute. The hit reality show Bachelor in Paradise, no stranger to provocative behavior, but it may have gone way over the line. When we come back.
This program is brought to you by Tenor.
I think we need to know more about that. And there's only one way to know about it, and that's to have the Judiciary Committee take a look at that.
So that was Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein reacting to the troubling James Comey admission that former Obama Attorney General Loretta Lynch asked him to downplay the Clinton email investigation. The senator joining a group of Republicans demanding some answers about that whole thing, that Lynch requested that he refer to the investigation as a, quote, matter rather than an investigation, which was the same language that the campaign was using at that time. So for more on this, we go to Chief National Correspondent Ed Henry, live at the White House tonight. Hi, Ed.
Good to see you, Martha. That's right. Republican Lindsey Graham, not always an ally of President Trump, wants to make sure that Loretta Lynch now has to testify before one of the many Senate committees investigating Russian interference in the last election. Particularly, Graham wants to know more about the Obama administration's own interference in the last election, why exactly the former Attorney General told James Comey to call that criminal investigation of Hillary Clinton and her email server merely a matter, to downplay it. Comey, of course, testified that it gave him a queasy feeling and did not always follow Lynch's guidance. Republican Peter King also wants to see if Comey wrote memos on his talks with Lynch like he did with his talks with President Trump, in part to see if this had anything to do with that highly unusual Arizona tarmac meeting that Lynch had with former President Bill Clinton last June, something White House Counselor Kellyanne Conway today teed off on.
It also goes back to the tarmac meeting between Lynch and President Bill Clinton. It takes about 4.5 minutes, not 45 minutes, to talk about golf and the grandkids, a couple of selfies included. So I think those questions have always swirled around. And I think what Senator Feinstein as a Democrat did is very refreshing, because the Democrats, now they basically say the word Russia more than they say America. They are obsessive about this. They are obstructionists.
Now, Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer says he has not yet heard Lynch's side of the story, so is not sure it rises to the level of dragging her up to the Hill to testify. Schumer says he just doesn't want anyone to, quote, jump to any conclusions, a deference that Trump officials here say they have simply not gotten from Chuck Schumer so far. Martha.
Ed, thank you very much. Here now with more, Mark Thiessen, an American Enterprise Institute scholar and also a Fox News contributor, and Juan Williams, co-host of The Five and a Fox News political analyst. We have some other news we want to get to, but let me get your reaction to that story first, gentlemen. Juan, what do you make of it?
Well, I mean, to me, it's like comparing a pimple to cancer. I mean, yes, people want to know.
When it's not so bad, when it's very bad.
Yeah.
Translation.
So already Clinton has not only been investigated but cleared. So this is like water over the dam. It's done. But I think that there are lots of people on the Trump side who want to focus on Lynch, Clinton, and especially the character of Jim Comey, asking why didn't he take notes? Was he bullied? Was he essentially being used as a puppet by the Democrats in the course of the campaign? But that's nothing comparable to what's going on in terms of the investigation of the president and the president's campaign for its ties to Russia.
Mark, what's your take on it?
That's not true, Juan. What you just said is not true. There is no investigation of the President of the United States. Comey testified to that fact. And that is the difference between these two cases, Juan, is that Donald Trump is not, has not, and never was under investigation for criminal activity by the FBI. Hillary Clinton was under criminal investigation. And Loretta Lynch aided and abetted her ability to lie about it. She repeatedly said, it is not a criminal investigation, it is a security review. She said it over and over and over again. And her campaign, they cited the Justice Department in saying it. In 2015, they had a campaign fact sheet from Hillary Clinton. Question, is the Department of Justice conducting a criminal inquiry into Clinton's email use? Answer, no, as the Department of Justice has made clear, this was not a criminal in nature, as misreported by some in the press. It was a criminal in nature. That is a lie.
No,
and they cited Loretta Lynch and the Justice Department to make that lie.
And then I do want to get your thoughts on this other news.
Okay, so Mark, remember, what you heard from Jim Comey was that while Jim Comey was the FBI director, there was no direct investigation of President Trump personally. The campaign was under investigation, and given what he said about potentially being told to back off of the investigation, he is now potentially under investigation by Robert Mueller.
You can't say that. It's not true what you're saying.
No, what he's saying, he's talking about the fact that now they're potentially looking at obstruction of justice. There was not an investigation into President Trump with regard to
the Flynn matter, which has nothing to do with Russia.
Well, of course it does.
Guys, I want to get your thoughts on something else because it's potentially a big deal. There's a story coming through that Chris Ruddy of Newsmax spoke to Judy Woodruff and said that the president has not ruled out the idea of axing Robert Mueller.
Oh, my goodness.
That's you have to sort of keep in mind that the way that it's presented. But he wouldn't say that it was absolutely off the table. Mark, what do you think?
Here's one where Juan and I are going to agree 100%. Yeah. You got to let the investigation go. I mean, to axe Robert Mueller would be the dumbest thing that Donald Trump could possibly do. Donald Trump is not under investigation personally, did not interfere with the Russia probe. Comey testified to both of those things. And if he did nothing wrong, in fact, he even said, if my associates, my satellites did anything wrong, I want to know about it. So if that is true, if he did nothing wrong, and he wants to find out if his satellites did something wrong, he should just let the investigation go.
No, I understand what you're saying, but it looks like they're getting concerned about the people that Mueller's bringing on, and this one attorney who has this very broad interpretation of obstruction of justice. So, you have to wonder, you go back to the Jeff Sessions issue, that the president was very unhappy with Jeff Sessions for recusing himself, which forced him to have to put this special counsel on this case in the first place, and now they're getting perhaps some cold feet about the whole thing. Judge Napolitano said at one point, Jeff Sessions could unrecuse himself. He could put himself back in charge of this thing if he wants to. Juan.
Well, I think your description is absolutely accurate, and the problem here is it would be explosive, and I say explosive, it's beyond explosive because it would just heighten the attention, the anger, the partisanship around this case. I don't think it's helpful, but it's not my position to say it's helpful. I'm just telling you, this would be incendiary.
Final
100% agreement.
Then we got to go.
100% agreement. That would be the stupidest thing Donald Trump could do.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, tonight coming up, another violent act depicted against the President of the United States. And now sponsors are fleeing from a New York City theater company after it performs a scene, depicting the bloody murder of Julius Caesar. Or is that man in the middle in the red tie and the reddish hair really Julius Caesar? Also today, critics labeling Ivanka Trump a hypocrite after she said she's shocked by the, quote, viciousness that has been shown to the Trump administration. Katie Pavlich and Matt Bennett take this one on next. Stay with us.
Is it harder than you thought to stick to the things you want to do because of what keeps coming up, whether it's the Russia investigation or something else?
Looking live at Defense Secretary James Mattis and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, James Dunford. They are testifying right now, live in Washington, on an evening hearing, very unusual, about military readiness. They're both not happy with the level that they are seeing right now, and sadly, this comes as we learn the identity of 3 American soldiers killed Saturday in eastern Afghanistan. The soldiers were assigned to the 101st Airborne Division in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Defense Department identifying them as 25-year-old Sergeant Eric M. Houck of Baltimore, Maryland, 29-year-old Sergeant William M. Bays of Barstow, California, and 22-year-old Corporal Dylan C. Baldridge, Youngsville, North Carolina. Another U.S. soldier was injured in that attack by a member of the Afghan security forces who was working with our United States troops. So a, quote, filthy liar. That is what some very harsh critics are labeling Ivanka Trump tonight in the wake of comments that she made exclusively to Fox News earlier today when she was asked if working alongside her father at the White House is harder than she thought. Watch.
There's a level of viciousness that I was not expecting. I was not expecting the intensity of this experience. But this isn't supposed to be easy. My father and this administration intends to be transformative, and we want to do big, bold things, and we're looking to change the status quo. So I didn't expect it to be easy. I think some of the distractions and some of the ferocity was I was a little blindsided by on a personal level.
There's been a lot of reaction to that today. Here with us this evening is Katie Pavlich of townhall.com and a Fox News contributor as well she is, and Matt Bennett, co-founder of Third Way. Welcome to both of you.
Good to be here.
Matt, let's go with you first. What was your reaction to that?
I mean, come on. Her father has blown through almost every barrier that was to protect the presidency against this kind of ridiculous behavior. When he was running for president, he mocked a reporter who was disabled. He attacked a Gold Star family. He attacked a federal judge on his ethnicity. He bragged about assaulting women. And he spent 2 years undermining the legitimacy of his predecessor on racist grounds. This guy, the gall of this guy's family to complain about harshness in Washington is off the charts.
I mean, Katie, that's the obvious argument to this, that nobody pushed the limits of, sort of good behavior or polite behavior, I guess I should say, when you look back at the debate stage and you look at the incidences that Matt just cited. So did Donald Trump, sort of get what was coming to him on that front when he got to Washington?
Well, look, I think there's no doubt that Donald Trump ran a campaign that was less than above bar when it comes to the types of things he said and the types of things that he said against certain people. That's for sure. And a lot of Republicans, let's not forget, criticized him for that. But I think in the context of what Ivanka was asked today, she's talking about the campaign being over and her experience working alongside her father in the White House. She is his advisor, and you see in the media and the press them trying to drive this wedge between her and him and accusing her of being complicit if he doesn't do exactly what she wants him to do, saying that she's lost on things like the Paris Climate Agreement. And the other issue here, Martha, is that you heard her say this administration wants to be transformative. This is the swamp, and it's really difficult to understand how powerful it is until you're here and feeling it. When you start going after government programs, civil servants, which needs reforming, those are fighting words, and people are going to really hold on to what they have because people like Donald Trump want to change it.
I think that's the translation. First of all, when I watched it again, and I watched it earlier today, that moment, she seems to be speaking from a very personal perspective on this match. She's saying, I didn't expect this when I got here. And, I think you look at the family and they're in that moment of victory on election night. And it's like, no, now we're going to go to Washington and we're going to do what the people who elected her father to do. We're going to get that work done. But I think she's, and also because, Donald Trump used to be a Democrat. I think they really thought that they were going to be able to sort of cross some lines there. And the fact that there's no cooperation from the Democrats is something that I think has taken them a bit aback.
Well, that's perhaps true, but look, Ivanka, nobody forced her to become a senior administration official. She could have remained in charge of her family business, and I think the impact on her and her husband didn't have to take a job either. They chose to enter this arena, and it's a rough one, particularly given the guy that they're working for. This is a guy who routinely steps on his staff's attempts to, direct him towards these big transformational changes that she claims he wants to make by bringing it back to these personal and petty grievances and, constantly referencing the size of his electoral college victory.
I guess, but the question becomes, can you separate yourself from that at some point? And I think that the swamp is very real. And Katie, you talk about, when I think about this long investigation that it looks like we're on the cusp of, right? I mean, Washington loves a long investigation. It's expensive. It employs a ton of lawyers. I mean, this is and it's just going to keep feeding on itself because it feeds the swamp.
Right. These investigations are the epitome of what we call this town here down in Washington, D.C. And look, I think that Ivanka is also referring to the pushback from the intelligence agencies, all of this leaking that we're seeing, leftover Obama political appointees really trying to sabotage his first 5 months in office. And I do want to push back a little bit in the sense that I don't think that she was complaining in that interview. I think when you listen to the rest of it, she specifically says, this is hard, but it's not as hard as a mom who lost her son to the opioid crisis, or the factory worker who lost his job. And we're going out to talk to real Americans and doing the work that they elected us to do, even though there is a viciousness that we have seen as an opposition to the administration.
I'm over time. Thank you so much. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Katie. So a very tough day in court today for the parents of Tim Piazza, who died in a hazing incident in Penn State. The video of his final moments was played in that court today, and it was hugely emotional. The details straight ahead. And coming up, a New York theater can't get enough of going after President Trump. Speaking of that, last year, Meryl Streep dressed up as the president. But how about this version of Julius Caesar? Et tu, Brute? Oh, yes. Him too. Why the staff
hasn't moved. He's cold. Show me. It's probably an ambulance.
That was the 911 call made 12 hours too late for Penn State sophomore Timothy Piazza. A hearing wrapped moments ago, and the decision is expected tomorrow on whether there's enough evidence to move forward with a case against several of his fraternity brothers. They face charges starting with involuntary manslaughter. These are pictures of them coming in today. The video of that night was shown, although the family of the pledge who died during the hazing incident left before the video began. Our Fox producer describes some of what has been seen in the video on that courtroom today. It shows Piazza being carried through the lobby unconscious and limp. Multiple frat brothers carrying him, placing him on the couch. On the left side of the tape, a visible bruise on his abdomen. He then falls off the couch. They pick him up. They put him back twice. They slam him on his back onto the couch, slapping him on his side where he has already been injured. It shows him on the floor rolling around at one point in the fetal position. He then gets up, heads toward the basement, steps over two people and falls down them, according to the reports. Hours later, they carry him up, and he is draped in a black coat that is said to be too small for him. His fraternity brothers, so to speak, stand around him. They put their hands up on their heads, like, what's going on? What do we do? They put a blanket on him. Finally, someone calls 911, according to the detective. The judge says that there will not be a gag order in this case, so we are covering that very closely, as you know, and we'll bring you more as we get it. In the meantime, beware the Ides of March, right? Especially when the character's wearing a long red tie and a famous comb-over. A production of Julius Caesar in New York depicts the tragic Roman ruler looking just like Donald Trump. He also has a Slavic, well-dressed wife, and some say that the stabbing scene, which is generally pretty rough in Julius Caesar, is pretty rough here as well. So Delta Airlines and Bank of America said no mas. We are pulling out of this production. No more money towards this production. Trace Gallagher has details for us tonight from L.A. Trace?
Hey, Martha, in this version of Julius Caesar, the emperor is a familiar businessman known for well-cut suits and a bad temper. Now, Donald Trump's name is never mentioned, but the lead is played by a Trump lookalike. His name is Greg Henry, who admits that he's playing a man drunk with ego, power, and ambition, and that his idea was to show that this could be Donald Trump. And, of course, just like in the original play, to curb Caesar's power, he is summarily stabbed to death. Many who saw the preview were offended, saying something like this would never have flown if it was about Presidents Obama or George W. Bush. As you said, Delta Airlines and Bank of America, who sponsors Shakespeare in the Park, have decided to pull their funding, with B of A releasing a statement that reads in part, quote, "The public theater chose to present Julius Caesar in a way that was intended to provoke and offend. Had this intention been made known to us, we would have decided not to sponsor it." Donald Trump Jr. also weighed in, tweeting, quote, "I wonder how much of this art is funded by taxpayers. Serious question. When does art become political speech, and does that change things?" Well, we checked, and it turns out the National Endowment for the Arts is not funding this production, but oddly enough, Donald Trump's foundation did fund Shakespeare in the Park back in the 1980s. And despite the outrage over the Trumpian figure being stabbed in public, some theater goers say it's much ado about nothing. Watch.
You know, if SNL is going to have the right to depict Donald Trump in satirical ways, and you know, this is not in a satirical way. This is, you know, the ancient Shakespeare way.
The theater just issued a statement standing behind the production, and we should note opening night of Julius Caesar gets underway in Central Park in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty hot up there tonight in Central Park. So what about free speech? Thank you, Trace. By the way, let's bring in Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of DailyWire.com, and Jessica Tarlov, senior director of research at Bustle.com and a Fox News contributor. Free speech. They have the right to do it. Saturday Night Live. It's a good point, Ben, that was made by that young man. But is there something wrong with this? Does it go over the line?
Well, I mean, I think that it crosses a number of lines. Again, you know, Trace mentioned the idea that if somebody had done this about Barack Obama, it would have been the end of the world in the media. And in fact, it was. The rodeo clown in Missouri got fired for having temerity to put on a Barack Obama mask and then run around like an idiot. And I remember the lieutenant governor of the state, the senator from the state condemned it. So it's not, you know, rare that politically advantageous things from one side or another are done and people react badly to it. I think that the sponsors have every right to pull their money, obviously. And if I were at Delta, I would not want the blowback. But I think that as a general rule, we should be careful about what I think are sometimes astroturf campaigns against particular pieces of art or particular expressions, because that's a very slippery slope. If we all start boycotting products because we don't like the views expressed by some of the people that the products are sponsoring, we could be in serious trouble just in the political media in general.
Yeah, it comes on the heels of Kathy Griffin's holding of the head with, you know, ketchup on it or whatever. It was horrific. Is this okay, Jessica?
I happen to think it is okay, and I take all Ben's points, and it's free speech first and foremost, but I wanted to remind the audience, or maybe tell them for the first time, that there actually was a 2012 rendition of Julius Caesar starring someone who looked exactly like Barack Obama. And there was no uproar from that, and certainly not from the liberal left, that everyone claims they're just snowflakes all the time. So this has been done before. It will be done again. I think this is particularly sensitive in light of what happened with Kathy Griffin just last week. And I think that Don Jr. weighing in on this and not acknowledging, first of all, that this had happened before with Barack Obama specifically, but the free speech importance here and the fact that we have to protect art, and since we did find out that it wasn't taxpayer funded specifically for this piece, is critical. I do like, though, that both Delta and Bank of America did not pull funding generally from the public theater. They did from just the specific production, and I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah. I mean, you think back to the origins of Shakespeare. When it was originally done, a lot of times it poked fun at people in power. You know, it's part of the political, you know, Queen Elizabeth was poked fun at, but it was always done in sort of a subtle Shakespearean way, and this is really not so subtle. I mean, it's really sort of slams you over the head, like the stabbing scene in the end of Julius Caesar. So, you know, generally, I love Shakespeare, and the productions that they do in the past couple of years have not been well done. So I don't know if people are just going to vote with their feet and not go to these things anymore. It's a fantastic venue. It should be well done, and unfortunately, it hasn't been recently. Well, very quick thought on this T-shirt. Just pop up the T-shirt. This is a totally different story, but a kid wore a Trump T-shirt in his yearbook, and it was removed by the people who do the yearbook. And if we put the picture up, we'll see it just there he is. See? Trump? No Trump. Yeah. Ben, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's viewpoint discrimination. I think that, again, this comes down to if they are just banning people from wearing Trump shirts or obliterating the Trump watermark on people's yearbooks. Apparently, they removed Trump quotes from the yearbook. Yeah. He's the president of the United States. I mean, this is a little bit over the top to me, and by a little bit, I mean a lot.
Yeah, I totally agree. Going in full agreement with the conservative tonight. Yeah, I thought it was ridiculous. And this, in the end, really actually just hurts liberals because it makes it look like we're all crazy and that we think that the word Trump is hate speech. I would also like to add, though, the message of Julius Caesar is actually anti-assassination, to add insult to injury there about coming after it.
Thank you, guys. Good to see you both.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So the show Bachelor in Paradise abruptly halts filming and brings everyone back from Mexico when alcohol and a pool scene turn from steamy into something potentially much darker. Is the lid about to be blown off of reality TV? We're going to ask attorney Mark Eiglarsh for the legal fallout when we come back.
I didn't come all this way to watch everybody else, get their chance. I always go after what I want. I want Nick right now. Right now.
Serious. Now, Bachelor in Paradise has been suspended indefinitely. Trace Gallagher reports live from the West Coast with the story. Trace.
Martha, the show just began taping its fourth season in Mexico and was supposed to start airing them in August, which apparently won't happen now. The controversy reportedly involves contestants Corrine Olympios and Demario Jackson. Both are veterans of the Bachelor franchise, but the sexual misconduct complaint wasn't filed by Miss Olympios. Instead, it was a field producer who said it appeared that Corrine Olympios was so drunk on the first day of filming, she had no ability to consent to Demario Jackson's sexual moves, which included the two stripping down, getting into a pool, and having various sexual encounters without having intercourse. And the cameras were rolling the entire time. After the complaint was filed, Warner Brothers shut down production and issued a statement that reads in part, quote, "Once the investigation is complete, we will take appropriate responsive actions." Demario Jackson reportedly says the touching and rubbing was consensual, and he says Olympios was the instigator. Those who have seen the videotape say it appears Corrine Olympios is lucid and fully engaged. And TMZ is now reporting that Olympios is not blaming Demario Jackson, but she is blaming the producers, saying she was in a blackout state and would never have behaved like that because she has a boyfriend. She did not explain what she would have told her boyfriend had she ended up engaged at the end of the season. The remainder of the Bachelor in Paradise contestants have been sent to stay in Houston, though it's unclear exactly why.
Wow.
Martha.
A lot there. Thank you, Trace. Joining me now, Mark Eiglarsh, criminal defense attorney. Mark, what do you make of this whole thing?
One more reason to dislike these type of shows. Look, they've got some problems here. If she alleges that she didn't consent and they created an environment which is supposed to be about relationships in a secluded and dreamy scenario, right? What it really is alcohol with villains and enemies so that there's as much drama and hookup as possible. It's reasonably foreseeable that something like this is going to happen.
I mean, you just look at the video that we just showed before. I mean, this makes The Bachelor and The Bachelorette look pretty tame. I mean, it's basically like an orgy, right? They're all just like, we showed the picture just moments ago. But where do you draw the line? This is a producer initially who brought this out and said that she felt uncomfortable because it was obvious, according to the original statement here, that this young woman was so drunk that there was no way she could consent to what was going on. So how culpable are the producers who, obviously the more salacious this thing gets, the better it is for the show, right?
They know exactly what they're doing. They know on one hand, it's wonderful TV. That's what they want, as much drama and hookups as they can get. On the other side, they're going, my goodness, there's a lot going on here. There's alcohol, but let's just keep going. Let's keep it rolling.
But don't these people all sign agreements that say, I know that everyone's going to be drinking, I know it's going to be physical? I mean, legally, how culpable are the producers or the show itself?
There is nothing in that agreement that says that we are going to facilitate an alleged rape. And if she alleges that she was in a blackout state and producers continue to foster that environment, she could say, wait, hold on. I have something for you, by the way. Again, I'm happily married, but will you accept this final rose?
What's the deal? She said she had a boyfriend. She didn't want the boyfriend. Isn't the whole idea that you're supposed to be looking for a boyfriend when you go on this trip?
It doesn't make any sense, and I'm sure they're going to fire back and point the finger. Yeah. All
right, so in terms of what happens next, and I know you suggested in the comments that you sent before, Mark, that you think this might be a publicity stunt, this whole thing?
I'm not convinced that any of this is real. I mean, we're all talking about
video,
a show
we know that.
Well, there is, but the intricacies, what's really happening, this is all wonderful for the show that will continue on once they determine that everybody's cool with it. Right? That's what's going to happen. By the way, there's precedent for this. The Real World was sued when a girl claimed that she was raped, and they cut her an undisclosed amount to settle that one.